Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let's jump right into this video. Let's do it.
100,000 minors. We have no idea where they are.
Oh, that is nonsense.
That is not nonsense.
No, it is. They are not lost. They're released to their sponsors who have to go through background checks. You have no idea what you're talking about.
They don't.
You think 300,000 minors are lost in America? Are you crazy?
I'm saying that. Why, hello there. I'm Ben Shapiro, and I'm co-founder of the Daily Wire and host of the Ben Shapiro Show. And today, I'm surrounded by 25 Kamala Harris supporters.
I'm back.
My first claim is Kamala Harris's attempts to put DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center of her policies is destructive.
Who's gonna fight him on that? Who's gonna fight him on that? This is the biggest video on the internet.
How's it going, dude? Where'd I get one of those hats?
Oh, my boy made it for me.
Nice.
So
Beta!
yeah, first of all, we're standing on stolen indigenous Tongva land, right? This is
Are you moving anytime
indigenous
soon?
land. No, but
Why?
the fact of the matter is
So
I'm
then
born and
why
raised
would you-
California. We're talking
Yeah, but
about
it's stolen land.
Yo, yeah, bro. I'm sorry to pause so quickly in this video, but damn. You're gonna start talking about indigenous stolen land that you yourself are on? What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? You're on land that you're. Get off. That's a terrible way to start this entire argument, dude.
And that's why you
diversity,
do it back.
equity, and vision. We should.
So why don't
We
you?
absolutely
You
should.
could do it today, right now.
Great.
So
We
do it.
should, but that's not my point here. The point is you're saying that diversity, equity, and inclusion is destructive.
Yes.
Right. So when we look at this country that is built off the backs of slavery and white supremacy, taking the lead, building the roots and foundations of everything that you know and believe today, it's ironic to see a Black and Indian woman who's rising up to the occasion against society, pushing them down. And this isn't just the fact that they're Black and Indian and a woman, it's the fact that
Can you give me an
those
example of how society
demographics-
pushed Kamala Harris down, please?
The demographic of people is what I'm talking
Well,
about.
yeah, but you suggested that Kamala Harris is being pushed down by society.
I'm not suggesting that, no.
I mean, that's
So
Okay,
my
pause.
point is saying
I'm
that
sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return.
Of course, he had to get voted out, bro. That was the dumbest way to start this whole thing, dude. Holy cow.
good to meet you.
Idiot.
Whoa.
Come on. Sexy Red thought she was really going to make it there.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice to meet you.
This system is
So my
stupid.
opening question to you would be, why is that a destructive thing? Why is that a bad thing when for a long time in this country, I feel personally that white men have had an advantage over some communities that have been discriminated against. So why would you say that that is a destructive thing and not, maybe making up for lost time?
Sure. So let me explain what I mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the basic theory of diversity, equity, and inclusion is spelled out by people like Richard Delgado, who's sort of one of the founders of, for example, critical race theory, is that essentially disparities equal discrimination. That if you see any disparity between one group in the United States and another group in the United States, that is the result of some exterior discrimination. It is not the result of individuals within that group acting differently. It's not the result of cultural differences. It's not the result of aggregated differences within individuals within that group. And that to me is a failure of logic. It also is destructive in that it separates group from group, particularly in the United States, on the basis of race, which is not the best way of actually bringing Americans together or forming policy that is the best for all Americans.
Do you think there's room for nuance, perhaps, though? Like, yeah, maybe not everybody, but there certainly has been a large sect of people that has had it harder because of the color of their skin or their sexuality or their gender identity. Could you acknowledge that maybe there's, a middle ground there where it's not all, but there is some people who certainly have had a disadvantage?
I will say that history has consequences, obviously, and that if you are talking about historic marginalization of particular groups, that has consequences. The problem is that when you design policy in order to rectify for cosmic injustices or historic injustices, you actually have to try and measure out whether underperformance, say, economically, is due to those historic injustices. If so, how much? What is the corrective policy that is actually aimed at achieving best opportunity for all? The diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that are directed at separating race from race and then benefiting one race, for example, at the expense of another, ignore the fact that there are individuals within those groups, that history does not fall on everybody equivalently, that frankly, genetics and intelligence don't necessarily fall on an individual level, right? You and I, we don't look the same. We might have different heights. We might have different qualities. That is just the way that God or nature has bestowed skill sets on everybody. What exactly is the government supposed to correct for? And if you took this entire group and you separated it in half, just draw a line anywhere. It's a circle, right? Anywhere you draw a line, you're going to get disparities between the two groups on either side of the line without regard to race, without regard to sex, and without regard to, for example, sexual
But does
orientation.
that mean that hasn't played an effect in that story at all?
I'm not going to, no, you'd be a fool to claim that, that, again, past injustices have no effect on what's happened today. Thanks so much. Watching guys gear up to run is really entertaining. That was so nice, everybody. Thank you.
So you believe that certain economic disparities between racial groups are caused as a result of cultural differences?
Sure.
Yes. 100%, dude. Are you dumb? Play that question back again, just so I can answer it and grill her.
Between racial groups are. So you believe that certain economic disparities between racial groups are caused as a result of cultural differences?
Yes, 100%. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. I'm a cook before Ben cooks. Let me cook before Ben cooks. Okay, yes, 100%. Your background that you come from culturally has a play into the economic status that you have into society. 100%. Okay, most of the time, blacks perform poorly economically because their cultural background is designed for them to perform poorly. Okay, the ghettos are built to hold and maintain black people inside of these projects. And then you have the rap music that they then are telling them to do gangster things, do gangster stuff, go to jail, do that. So right off the bat, the black person gets a terrible kind of like upbringing, and also sort of upbringing into their whole thing, right? So what you need to understand is that for the most part, a lot of these black people, they get this education that doesn't really make any sense for them, okay? It doesn't make sense for their whole entire upbringing, all right? Someone was making some dumb noise out there, which really kind of threw me off, but I'm gonna continue to go. So you have the rap music, which is telling them to do gang things and gang violence, which is then perpetuating the young black person to then stay in jail, to then stay in, not only stay in jail, but also to continue to make and do crimes. So by them continuing to do and make crimes, they end up staying in this lower economic status. Okay, because then they come out of jail not being able to take big jobs, not being able to do jobs that necessarily will require them to have an education. So they're stuck working at McDonald's and Walmart. So that, in a sense, plays for AKA black people. All right. But then you have white people who probably come from a more affluent background. Their family teaches them about financial literacy, how to be literal, how to take care of their finances, how to invest it, how to continue to move on in generations and generations. And this is why the majority of people who hold large amounts of wealth are also white people, and they perpetuate that for a long stretch of time. But also, you also have the Jews, which are also all work together, same way the Chinese do, the same way the Indians do. So then you have all these different other groups that are also can be called minorities, which have a way of working together and keeping the money in the community. So yes, that was a long-winded answer, but I hope we got where we need to go.
Sure.
And so what is the backing on this? What would you say contributes to your belief in that?
Okay, so not all cultures, for example, value studying in school the same. You can check this by the amount of hours that kids, a particular culture, study. So, for example, Korean Americans can study a lot more than, for example, Latino Americans in terms of the number of hours that kids study. It would be hard to suggest what to attribute that to other than sort of parental guidance and what exactly the priorities are of the parents. This is true, by the way, between white people. Okay, so when I talk about disparities between groups, you can talk about white Appalachia, and there are very different values with regard to studying than there are for, say, upper class white Americans who are living in Brooklyn. Right? That's not the exact same thing. So cultural differences are not just racial differences. I think that anybody who attempts to sort of clumsily map that on and pretend that that's all the same, that's obviously not true. But cultural differences do explain an enormous amount of group disparities across incomes. To take a perfect example, if you look at single motherhood rates, they're not equivalent across groups. Those are going to have massive differences with regard to outcomes for children. So if you're talking about cultural differences, again, cultural is just it was a rough way of saying how people act within a group on a large scale. And that is going to amount to some generalization, but that generalization is going to tend to, shall we say, concur. It's going to correlate very highly with outcome.
But culture is acclimated over time. It becomes a thing over time. And so do you not think that these historical disadvantages that certain ethnic groups have been through over time has created this culture in which they're unable to put themselves ahead?
Yes, you are correct with that question. That statement that you're making is 100% correct. But the only way for the colored people and the non-colored people to go ahead and change that and to play catch up in that situation is for the media itself to change the ideologies that are already set in place. A lot of these ideologies that are in place have been set in place for hundreds of years, but it's all by design. The destruction of certain cultural people have been set in design by the people who are higher up. So the only way to then go about changing that is to change the ethos of what he's saying. The studying, yes, of course, the thing that he's talking about, so these people study more than these people, he's just being politically correct about it. It's really about the media and the consumption of media, all right? The amount of time that the youth are spending on certain aspects. When you ask a person in the United States what do they want to be when they grow up, they tell you a YouTuber. When you ask somebody overseas what they want to become, they tell you, oh, I want to become a doctor, I want to become a space astronaut. So the entire philosophy of things has been shifted. So if we can get back to educating the youth and telling them that being somebody in society of actual status and being somebody in society that actually can help propagate the economy and help propagate not only your community, but society as a whole, if we can get back to that, then I think this sort of disparity between cultures will shrink and shrink further on throughout the years.
You do say that Asian Americans are more likely to
Studious,
study, yes, but we have to take into account that after the Chinese Exclusion Act, Asian Americans were given a certain type of reparations, which allowed them into the country. And in
What
order
were
for
the
them,
reparations?
they were given visas, which allowed them to come into the. Yes, they were given easier
I understand,
processes
but
into visas,
visas
yes,
are
which
not
allowed them
reparations.
into. No, it's a form of reparations, which they were once excluded from coming in. And so giving them an easier opportunity to attain these visas allowed them into the US. And mainly the individuals who were able to attain those were people with higher educations, which is why it may seem that Asian Americans within the country who come in typically with higher incomes as well as higher educational backgrounds, it may come off as that they are more studious than Latino Americans. But what we have to take into account is that Latin America and Hispanic people have faced a lot of
They're-
tremendous setback due to historical atrocities. It's not their culture per se. What you see within
Is there any individual agency in here, or is it all historic circumstance?
everything is based off of history. Everything acclimates. Everything is an accumulation of history.
So to take this in
So-
one
Yeah, but you can't play victim the whole time to say, oh, just because my race isn't necessarily high IQ, I'm going to play victim and I'm not good. No, you can still make a difference. Don't let your race dictate your entire, how your destiny is going to play out. That's not the right way to go about it. You have to stand above the sort of societal norms and societal this and that. I hate to always have to rag on black people, but black people are doing the worst right now, bro. Black people are down bad. I'm black. But luckily, I'm a black person who decided, you know what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to teach myself things that I don't necessarily know. Teach myself things that they never really taught me in school. Go on YouTube, educate myself, read books. So I can't. And every time they used to say, oh, as a black person, you got to work 4 times harder. No, you don't. If you believe that you do, then yes, then you're going to have to. But sometimes I walk around without even realizing that I'm black. And some of the opportunities that I get, a lot of people are like, oh, oh, because you're black, I didn't think you. No, these things have nothing to do with it. It's all about the effort and things that you put in. The higher up you go, the color of money doesn't see skin color, bro. It's all these billionaires and millionaires, the way they converse with each other is all just based on what you can do and all based on merit. They don't care if you're black, dude. Come on.
example, for
the
example.
way
Okay, that's funny.
Griller, stop running to the desk.
Whoa. Hey, how's it going? How are you?
How you lose?
Good to meet you.
How you
So you're
lose the
basically
dirty
saying
red
that
like that?
culturally, people don't have the same.
What is that? What is that? What the fuck? Wow. 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 Holy cow. What? No. What are we doing in America, dude?
Same advantages, right?
I'm saying that not every culture sort of initiates.
Ben can't even look it in the eyes, dude. It's so horrific.
The same action within groups.
So in part, you're saying that you're part of each culture. You know what goes on in each culture to say these things.
No, I'm saying that I can analyze the activities of a particular group with reference to their actual behavior.
So if you go into my culture, we're told that we can achieve anything through hard work. We have to work 10 times harder. But you're not part of our culture, so you're explaining something that doesn't have to do with you.
I literally just touched on that point, you alien spaceship. I literally just touched on that point when I said, I literally just touched on that point. Okay, so I don't need to go into it because I already said it. And it's always the black people, bro. Black people always want to play victim. Y'all always want to play victim, the victim card. Oh, we're black. Oh, life is hard. We're black. We're black. Shut up. Shut up. No, life is not hard because you're black. Life is hard because you want your life to be hard, you idiot. Come on.
But in turn, you're saying that that culture, unfortunately, does not value the same thing that the next culture does.
So revealed preference tends to be a better way of doing social science than subjective perception. So revealed preference is how people act in the world. So for example, if you have one group of people who say, we really, really value our kids studying, and then their kids don't study at all, that would be a revealed preference.
Okay.
Everybody has
So then when you
reason
have
to say their
people
kids study.
who say in corporate America, you have people who value nepotism versus actual studying hard. What is that called then?
Okay, so the idea that people generally value nepotism over studying hard, I'd like to see the evidence of that, given the fact the vast majority of wealth in this country is not created through nepotism or through inherited wealth.
But Donald Trump was given nepotism, was he not?
I mean, he's one example among a bajillion people who are very, very wealthy.
Now you're using a minority to dictate. You can't use a small percentage of thing. We speak in generalities, okay? Generalities. This is bugged out,
this
bro.
country. I'm very wealthy now. I certainly wasn't born very wealthy.
But then you can't speak on Donald Trump's experience,
that
can you
just
not?
happens to be the case. Okay, I mean, you can laugh at my particular history, but I grew up in an 1,100 square foot home in Burbank, California, with 4 siblings in 1 bedroom.
In Burbank, hold on. In Burbank, I'm sorry, but in Burbank versus growing up in South Central, being told that you have to excel 10 times harder than the next person, but then you're not part of the culture, to say that you can actually come to these disparities is kind of farsighted.
I mean, the idea that you have to work 10 times harder coming from South Central based on, for example, test score is obviously not true. We've had affirmative action programs in this country for solidly 40
But now
years.
affirmative action is gone. It's out the door.
Thank
Now
God, it was a bad
DEI is
program.
present. DEI is actually saying that we need to have diversity, equity, inclusion. So you're actually putting a footing in the door for different races, different genders, different women, different men, everything. So now you're saying that because this program's gone, this one isn't.
Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Get out.
Like a jackrabbit. Thank you, guys.
Come on, guys. What was that? What was that? You're gonna let that woman win? You guys gave up. You didn't even try to take the chair, dude. What is that? Oh, come on, guys. All right. I literally cannot continue the video, mainly because, well, there's no more internet. But I want to continue the video. Actually, no, I can. What am I saying? 1 second. We just pause this, guys. We'll get back to it.
I appreciate that.
Hi,
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, I kind of want to shift the conversation about DEI a little bit away from.
Can we even take you seriously with all these nose piercings? Come on, guys.
Because I don't know if that's necessarily like a helpful conversation to have. And I really want to talk more about representation. So 1 in 5 Americans currently is Hispanic. This country, like it or not, is not a homogenous country. We are a very diverse country. Do you not think that our legislators should be representative of the overall population?
I don't see a way that you can have a quote unquote representative legislature with 435 members of Congress in a country of 340 million people, because you can divvy that up however you want. It's not by race. You can do it by sex. You can do it by gender. You can do it by sexual orientation. How exactly do you decide what is quote unquote the representative group? And also, I don't believe that individuals ought to be represented based on group identity. So, for example, I'm Jewish. Jews are actually overrepresented in Congress. I don't think that we ought to decide exactly how many people in Congress are Jewish based on the Jewish population of the country. I think that's actually a pretty silly way to do representation.
Well, we don't have to do it systematically, but fundamentally, there is an issue with the fact that we are not fully represented. Like, the entire population is not represented.
I mean,
we have
that's not
never
true,
had a
though.
black female president. I still have to pay taxes.
We've never had a
the
Jewish
whole
president.
concept
Who
is
cares?
no taxation without. We have had a white male president. We've had like 45 of them.
Whether Jews count as white or not has been sort of an optic.
Technically, isn't Kamala president right now as we speak? As we sit here and we're talking, Kamala is president, all right? Sleepy Joe had to step down, so technically, we do have a black female president.
For quite a while. We do. Okay.
You do.
So, I mean, it depends according to whom, and that's a pretty recent development. Okay, so
Basically, everyone. It's a religion.
Judaism
Do
is
you
also
not
an
agree
ethnicity.
that you were a white man?
I mean, I think that it depends on the context in which we're discussing it.
So
Meaning
what
that-
are you, Ben? Are you not a white guy?
I mean, I'm a man of Jewish ethnicity, which is sometimes grouped with white and sometimes not. I mean, that's the more accurate way to put it. But when
What
we're
else would
talking
you be
about
grouped with?
with Jews, who are which is an
But it's-
ethnicity. I mean,
So
yeah.
you're not white at all.
I mean, again, it depends.
He's a Jew, he's not white, baby, he's a Jew.
And who's doing the grouping and how. I've seen Jews grouped with white and Jews grouped with not white. Are we just pretending that doesn't exist? That's a reality. However, as far as your generalized point, which is that we are supposed to identify people by group identity, if we don't have a black female president, somehow black females have not been represented. So Barack Obama was in no way representative of black females because he's not a female.
No,
he's
he
black.
was. He was representative,
So
but
he was
that's
half
the point.
representative. How do you do the math on this, and why?
You shouldn't do the math on it completely statistically, but the fact
You shouldn't
is
do the math
there's
on it at all. You should treat
clearly
people as individuals.
underrepresented.
You should treat people as individuals.
Well, if you don't even want Kamala Harris to attempt to create DEI initiatives in office, then there isn't even going to be a conversation about it.
I mean, I don't think there ought to be a conversation about why we ought to be represented by race or by sex. I think that we are each individual people with individual ideas, and if that person represents my ideas, I don't care what sex, race, or sexual orientation they are.
I mean, to an extent, yes,
No,
but
entirely.
there is an issue with the lack of empathy in office. We need to be able to empathize and legislate for the people that are living in this country. Do you not believe that?
I was not aware that empathy is relegated to particular race solidarity.
No, but I mean, it's easier to be empathetic towards people whose experiences you can fundamentally understand based on your identity. Like, do you not believe that people have an inherent bias
So first of all, I'm
based
not
on
sure, I
identity?
mean, we can start with empathy itself. I'm not sure that empathy is always the best basis for actual public policy, because when you have group solidarity and empathy based on group solidarity, you're going to attempt to actually benefit the group with whom you have solidarity. So that actually cuts against
But
generalized
that's like a
public
fundamental
policy.
thing that just exists, which is why we need representation in government.
Get her out of here, bro. Get her out of here. She brought the notebook. Get her out of here, bro. She's wearing the dog collar. Come on, man. Get this bitch out of here, dog.
Okay, cute. Thank you.
Well, he got it this time. All right, nice. Good to see you. How are you doing?
Of the
Doing all right. How are you
running.
doing? You know,
They didn't have a better way to do this. Out of like, oh my god. for such a highly like academic, like thought-provoking little segment, they didn't have a better way of getting people up to the chair. They didn't have like a button that we could press. Like, oh my god, it's almost very savage.
It's been a day.
Yes, it's a little bit of like an interesting setting being surrounded by 20 people that disagree with you.
I mean, the truth is I grew up in LA and then I went to law school in Cambridge. So I'm
you're
a little
more
used to
than
it.
20.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about DEI. Do you think that Trump should have won 2016? I'll wrap it in. It's conceptually relevant. I'll demonstrate the relevance.
Okay, sounds good. By what measure? Do I think he did win or do I think he should have won?
Do you think he should have won?
I mean, yes, I'm happy that he won. If the question is, am I happy that he won? I'm happy that he won.
Okay. Well, I'd say that Trump won 2016 because...
By the way, I did not vote for either candidate in 2016. That's a decision made in retrospect.
Awesome. So I think that Trump won 2016 because of a modality of DEI. Essentially, what I'd say is the Electoral College, right, strives for inclusion of smaller states with lower populations by overrepresenting them in the overall vote. Like, you could correct me if I'm wrong, or the SAN fact checkers can. I'm pretty sure that over the last 25 to 30 years, Republicans have won the presidency given the Electoral College, not given the overall popular vote. So if you're against DEI, if you don't want inclusion on the basis of race, inclusion on the basis of gender, or even what you're saying earlier, we could even say inclusion on the basis of class, why do you want inclusion on the basis of population, rural areas, states,
We should actually use a better example. Why don't you just ask if I believe in the U.S. Senate? Right?
The U.S. Senate, this would also apply to the U.S. Senate.
Right, okay, so let's use the U.S. Senate because the U.S. Senate is actually even more unrepresentative of the general population than the Electoral College, which is at least a rough approximation.
It'd just be funnier to hear you say that you shouldn't have voted for Trump in 2016, but we could talk about
that's a different...
What kind of... That's where you wanted him to take his answer? Come on, you guys. Come on. You guys are supposed to be academic. You guys are supposed to be the guys who study in school a lot. That's who you guys are supposed to be. You guys are supposed to be all liberal and proud and wave the flag. Come on, man. What a stupid answer, this guy. Like, what is that? That's what you wanted an answer? Come on, man. How would that validate your point in any way?
Subject, but I'm very happy that he won, even though I didn't vote for him. I mean, we can talk about Trump later. We've already done a bit. Well, I'm sure we'll do more. As far as the idea that every elected body has to be elected based on population as opposed to based on the area of geographic distribution or the states that actually pre-existed the federal government. Okay, the way that the Constitution of the United States was created was as a contract between sovereign states, which is one of the reasons why, for example, you have a United States Senate as opposed to just a House of Representatives. So is that a form of DEI? That seems like a stretch to me. The kind of DEI that I'm talking about specifically would be separating human beings based on inherent characteristics, like, for example, race, as opposed to suggesting that the United States Senate, which is obviously unrepresentative of the general population.
Well, seemingly my point is
that's just a check and balance, right?
Well, seemingly my point is that this is another modality of DEI. I've like no problem with you explaining to me, right, why the Senate or the Electoral College would be given the U.S. Constitution and like some contractual agreement that they had between the sovereign states. That's fine. But what I'd say is that your claim here would just imply that the Constitution upholds DEI within our electoral processes.
If your claim is
so, do you think that the Constitution upholds DEI in the sense of including smaller states with less representative population?
Okay. This girl here is wearing sneakers. Obviously, you can't see because my image is covering it, but she's wearing a full suit. This girl in teal here. She's wearing a full suit and sneakers. That's why.
That is a true stretch of the meaning of DEI, but I get your point. I mean, if the idea is that the only thing that is not pure DEI in a democratic context would be sort of popularly represented votes, then I think you can make the case that basically you should get rid of every representative institution. We should go to a pure democracy because...
Well, I'm not making a case for what we should replace.
This guy's serial killer eyes also.
Replace it with. I'm making the case that it would uphold DEI. We could talk about what other systems should function in the case of the Electoral College or in the case of the Senate, but that's a completely different conversation than are these systems upholding DEI.
So again, I think that you're definitionally stretching DEI. If DEI is the basic idea that all disparities equal discrimination and must be rectified by government interventionism, which is sort of the definition, then stretching that to mean the Electoral College seems like you're going pretty far afield to defend a very broad concept as specifically badly applied.
Wait, 1 second. I don't think that we need to say that DEI is equivalent to disparities equal discrimination. We could just see that DEI is like a qualm for disparities in general, right? And what we apply here in this certain modality when we're talking about the Electoral College, when we're talking about the Senate, is we're trying to qualm the disparities of the lack of populations in rural areas. We're trying to qualm the disparities of smaller states compared to larger states. And seemingly, you haven't really given me a response to this apart from calling it a stretch, but I do appreciate you for...
No, I mean, it seems to me like the argument that you're making is that in order for there to be calm and sort of conciliation inside the United States, particular racial groups have to be given particular benefits. Okay, well, because that was the argument with regard to the states in the United States, right? When the Constitution was...
But you can't give specific benefits to specific people, bro. Just because they're lacking or don't want to do the work. This is what happens when you give things to people that don't necessarily deserve it. They end up taking it for granted. And they don't end up being good people in the end because of it. So, no, what this guy is saying does not hold merit. For that, guys, I have to go because I'm not really a political guy, and I know that might dispute everything I said before this, but that's all right. Most of you will probably have not watched all the way to the end of the video. If you have, it's okay. That was only the first 18 minutes of this video. The rest can be found on Jubilee here as it has all the information. All right. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Chowsers.